Welcome back to another episode of the Socratic Cinema Podcast. We live in a society. This week, my name is James Delicio.
I'm Casey Clark.
I'm Charlie Heatherly.
And I'm Hallie Phillips.
And this week we watched Joker. It was a very, very hot movie. Very turbulent opinions about it all around. Charlie, why don't you go ahead and give a little rundown, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers.
Don't listen if you haven't watched Joker, because we're gonna ruin the whole movie.
Yeah, flashing light alert right now. Don't watch this before you watch the movie, because watching the movie is entirely worth it, and you should most certainly go do that. And it's very hard to give a summary of Joker, because it's such just a mind trip of a film. There's so many dream sequences and implied moments, but the general gist of it is there's this guy named Arthur Fleck, who is this mentally deranged man who has this condition where he will laugh at the wrong moments, because it's just this response that he has to a lot of nervous situations. And he is a clown. His purpose in life, as his mom says, is to bring laughter and joy to this cold, dark world. And he takes this mantra and he sort of twists it on his head as Gotham City slowly beats him down, literally and metaphorically, throughout his journey in the entire movie. He gets more and more fed up with how society works in Gotham, where the little guy is constantly ignored. So then he decides to fight back, and one day on a subway when some guys are beating him up, he shoots three, I think they said they were Wall Street guys or something like that. He shoots 3 Wall Street guys and incites this huge revolution throughout the city to fight back against the rich. As one of our co-hosts said, eat the rich beforehand.
Eat the rich!
Eat the rich! Sorry.
Stole our moment there.
So through this rebellion, Joker finds an identity, and he slowly becomes more and more confident with himself until he goes on to this one talk show of this guy that he's loved his entire life who made fun of him. He posted this embarrassing clip of Joker, so he goes on the show and then kills him, and this sort of culminates in the Joker realizing who he is as sort of this anarchist leader of society. And the movie ends on that sort of emotional note. Well, I would have liked the movie to end on that emotional note, but it goes on for one more scene in a mental sanitarium,
which is highly debated.
Yeah,
which is highly,
yeah, that's a high, which I would like to get into.
Definitely, that's probably the biggest talking point.
I definitely want to talk about that.
Should we start off with it?
Yeah, let's just go straight into it.
So,
dive right in.
Yeah, the movie ends with it's at first you're led to believe that this is most likely post the Gotham riots, and we see Joker's back in the mental hospital. His hair is not green anymore; it's back to brown, which was something interesting.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
So he's back to being Arthur Fleck, and he's being questioned by this psychologist, and the whole time he is doing his whole deranged Joker laugh. And she asked him, "What's so funny?" And he says, It's an inside joke. You wouldn't get it.
Right, and it has that shot of Bruce Wayne with his parents.
Right,
on
yeah.
the alleyway. Just for a split moment.
And then we cut to Joker running through the halls of the asylum, and we sort of zoom out, and that's the end of the movie.
Right, and he has bloody footprints.
And he has, he's
running.
He killed her.
Yeah,
I guess
curb stomped her. Really.
The assumption there is that that he killed the psychologist. There are a lot of scenes in this movie that I just was not it comes at you so fast, it's hard to say what is really happening and what the implications are behind everything. But as far as this ending goes, it does leave the impression that maybe this was all in Arthur's head, or maybe it actually happened and he's been imprisoned after the riots. It's really up to the audience's interpretation of what really happened. So what do you guys think is the true ending of Joker, I guess? What's real and what's not?
Personally, I would like to think that the Joker should not have an origin story. And that it is in the interest of writing the character for him to just simply be. Right. And not have a reason for being. So I would like to believe that this sanitarium scene is just one of the possible origin story, or it's showing how the entire movie is just one of the possible origin stories that the Joker has.
Right.
And how it could very well be a fantasy, or it could very well be real. I believe the ambiguity of the whole ending is sort of meant to show that how you're you're meant to look at the movie more as a character study rather than an actual story.
Yeah, I agree.
exactly.
So I guess would you say though, like in your personal opinion, do you think the events of the Joker origin story were supposed to canonically have happened, or do you think it's in Arthur's head?
I think it's in Arthur's head, and I think I would like it more if it was in Arthur's head, and it'd make more sense if it was in Arthur's head, because it would just fit more with the character,
Right.
Than it being a cut and dry tale of him, slowly going more and more insane.
Now I have heard, I guess, as a little bit of a counter argument, and this is just another theory to bring up. I've heard it proposed that because I agree with you that the whole point of the Joker is he doesn't have an identity, he doesn't have an origin story. But I've heard the interpretation that throughout Arthur's journey, especially there's one point in the movie where he's sort of disillusioned. He learns that he was adopted by his mom, who he thought was his father isn't really his father. He was abused by his parents, and he has all these repressed memories of an awful childhood. And at that point, the identity he's built around himself as Arthur Fleck is essentially dissolved. And I've heard the justification that this is him without an identity, and that's when he turns to being the Joker. Which I really like that interpretation, honestly, because I just think the whole, like, the lack of identity thing by his whole worldview being torn down, I think is a really interesting and kind of realistic way of having the whole there is no real Joker thing. Like, if everything you have ever known was a lie, and your identity is dissolved, like, that's something that can actually happen. So I think that's a really interesting explanation that I am a fan of, but I think your point's entirely valid, Charlie. I don't know. What do you guys think about the ending?
I agree with like both. As much as I would like it to have actually happened, I do understand that it wouldn't necessarily make sense. You know, like I feel like having it actually happen and making it more of like a American Psycho, some things are real. Did he actually do that? Did he not actually do that? Would make it way more confusing and leaves a lot more to be like interpreted. But I also like to believe that the Joker itself is just like an entity.
Yeah.
You know how from like the comics you are led to believe that Joker killed Thomas and Martha Wayne, but really it was, I loved how they like tied it in that it was someone in like the crowd. So I feel like the Joker identity can get, it's passed along from people who like need to be seen.
Right. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talking about how maybe Arthur Fleck was like the original inspiration for Joker, but the Joker as we know it, who fights Batman, is just someone who was inspired and took up the mantle. So this is the birth of the idea of the Joker rather than the character as we know it. And that's what I love about the movie, is that there's so many different interpretations and they all work, right? Because if we assume that Arthur Fleck is the Joker that fights Batman, by the time Bruce Wayne grows up, Arthur Fleck would be like 60 or 70, and that doesn't really add up. It's just so vague. I don't know. What did you think, Hallie?
I mean, I agree with Casey. I mean, I would have liked the ending to have stopped there and not had the kind of off end with the sanitarium, but this movie isn't a storytelling movie, it's an experience.
Yeah.
So I liked the fact that they had it open-ended so that way we could not have it definitive, because as you look through the whole movie, it's not like you have plot points, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like breathing through.
Yeah.
And I was watching the director's cut, which I think I sent to some of you guys.
Yeah.
But they just made up most of these scenes. They changed scenes that had original stories to them, and then just kind of let Joaquin mess around in them in this space.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, at first I was like, okay, that's interesting, because that also kind of makes the story too flexible, but I really enjoyed it at the end when they had the ending. Like, it made it encapsulated it to what it was meant to be.
Now, I guess for me, I kind of wish, I'm with you, Hallie, where I a little bit wish that the sanitarium scene almost wasn't in the movie, and I think you also said that too, Charlie, at the beginning. I almost wish it wasn't in the movie, because it's also kind of part of the reason that I didn't love American Psycho as much as I just really like good storytelling, I guess. I'm not saying that the Joker has bad storytelling, but to me, it feels like when you have, it's almost like at the end of the movie, it was all a dream. That sort of trope.
Like
it
a
just,
cop-out.
obviously this wasn't a cop-out and it was a really smart choice, but to me, it undercuts any drama or tension that there could have been, any consequence. Because throughout the movie, it's Joker's doing all this crazy stuff and he's slowly going further and further. When's it going to catch up to him? But by having it all be in his head, it kind of takes away any sense of tension or consequence for Joker's actions, and that kind of it takes away any some of the weight that the story holds. Similarly to an American Psycho, right? We see Patrick Bateman go further and further, and there's all these fantasy sequences, and when you realize that it was all a fantasy, it's at least for me, it kind of left me feeling very unresolved. Like, okay, like what? Nothing happened. What do you want me to do with this? I guess.
Well, at least in American Psycho, and I think in Joker 2, some of it is real. Mm-hmm. And again, it's up for you to decide what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
My problem with the storytelling in Joker, and I'm the only one in the group that has seen it twice,
right,
is that it doesn't, at least for me, hold up on a second viewing.
Oh.
I mean, because like what Hallie said, it's very much an experiential film where you're going into it and you're sort of just letting the movie take you to where it's going. Mm-hmm. And when you watch it a second time and you know the twists and the turns, you start to look for, what maybe could have clued off or one of these twists, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't find it. There's not a lot of foreshadowing going on or a lot of anything to tell you, this scene is going to come up and this is what is going to happen.
Right.
So it feels really dry on the second viewing because you're sort of just watching a meandering story, knowing all of the things that kept you interested the first time were shock, basically.
Yeah, I definitely get that. It's not like the Sixth Sense, wherein
not at all.
Each subsequent viewing it gets better with the Sixth Sense because you're picking up more and more clues. But in this one, I could definitely see, like in retrospect, knowing the twists, it's not, they're not clever twists so much as they are just like shocking twists, like to show you that Arthur's crazy and he completely fabricates most of his life in his head. Which are really, really effective the first time through. But yeah,
for sure,
I can really see how that would get, not boring, but, well, maybe a little bit boring the second time through.
Well, it's just interesting to see that I really, really liked the movie the first time through, but I really, really didn't like it the second time.
Now, I guess my question is, does your disliking the second time tarnish your view of it from the first time? Like, would it make your overall rating go down?
That's a good question, and I think... God, it's difficult to answer because the movie the first time through, I watched it and I was thinking the entire time, is this a masterpiece? Because that's what everyone's saying it is, right? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have called it a masterpiece the first time through, and I would be more sure of that statement the second time. Mm. I think that it's a flawed film, but it's very, very technically sound in things like directing and acting and cinematography and score and things like that. It just doesn't hold up story-wise the second time through. So I would, if we're giving it ratings, I would give it probably anywhere from a 7 to 8. I would hear arguments for both extremes and agree with them if they're good.
Right. Let's talk about the Oscars.
Yeah.
Because that's like a hot thing right now. Joker is
okay.
the big question. Do you guys think it's going to win an Oscar?
Yes.
Or any Oscars?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Acting, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, Joaquin
Acting
Phoenix.
or score.
The
the
score
score
was that it was, I believe, either a cello or they got like a cello or a viola soloist to do the score. It was absolutely haunting. It was so beautiful.
No, I heard from also the director's cut that they had the score before filming, and so most of the scenes were inspired by the score.
That's great. That's great, man. I know, but I remember I was watching the movie and I was it was almost a little bit distracting how good the score was. Like, this is so beautiful, and it's beautiful in like a melancholy, sad way. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous cello playing, but it's also harrowing, and it just
the anxiety.
It's so morose and gloomy. But back to the Oscars. Yeah, I don't think Joker will win. The movie itself will win anything like Best Picture or Best Director.
No.
But I think Joaquin Phoenix has a very, very, very good chance of winning Best Actor because this is some of the, like, this is some of the best acting I've ever seen.
He lost like 40 pounds for this.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I don't. If Heath Ledger could win an Oscar for his performance as Joker, then Joaquin Phoenix definitely can deserve it. And I know it's hard to compare Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix. I've been thinking to myself about, because one of my first instincts was, well, who's better? But they're not comparable. It's like apples and oranges.
You were telling me that. You simply just can't compare the two. And you're right, they're two entirely different interpretations of the character, because in one, it's a, psychotic mastermind that can go toe-to-toe with Batman. In another, it's just a crazy, broken man who's barely scraping by in all of his plans. Right? Like, the intelligence is lost with Joaquin Phoenix's.
Right.
But that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
It's just simply a fact of his performance. And you're right, it's not a fair comparison to make. Because unlike the other movie Jokers, where they're always fighting Batman and they always have to be the smart one, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker just isn't that, simply put.
No, yeah, he's kind of dumb.
He's kind of dumb, yeah.
He drops a gun in the middle of
a children's hospital.
And it adds into how pathetic he is.
Yeah.
Like, Arthur Fleck is not the person you want to be friends with.
Not at all.
And I think it's important.
That's so sad.
It's an important thing, though, I think, to acknowledge. From one of the takeaways from the movie is you're almost supposed to look at yourself and say, well, am I any better than Thomas Wayne? Am I any better than the rich people of Gotham? Like, would I be Arthur's friend? Probably not.
No, definitely not, yeah.
He's an alienating person, but that's such a hard question that the movie poses. Like, it's easy to feel bad for him, but if you saw Arthur, like, it's almost like you wouldn't do anything different. You would let him go. Like, you wouldn't do anything to help. You wouldn't do anything to save him.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. Like, that's such a bold move to basically, like, target your audience and say, like, you're no better than the villains of this movie. And that was just so raw for me. Like, I don't know. It just, it kind of hit me different.
It's a very unsettling movie, and it hits you, I mean, like you said, in a way that is hard to replicate in a lot of other films. And I saw this in something that one of the Oscar reviewers was saying, that they were unsettled from the first frame to the last. And they took that as a bad sign, that they didn't really enjoy their movie watching experience because of that. And I understand that, like, because it's hard to watch that movie. But it's, for a movie to do that and accomplish such a difficult goal of making you just feel off, like, for 2 hours straight, definitely points to how emotionally sound the movie is and how much it understands what it's trying to get out from its audience. I mean, like you said, the way that it questions the people that are watching it, saying, like, you're no better than all these evil people, right? Like, that's just, that, like you said, super amazing, and it's a bold statement for a DC movie to do that, and it's awesome that we're seeing innovative superhero movies, like we are now with Joker.
Is this supposed to... Is this considered separate from the DCEU?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, they're not having him fight Robert Pattinson's Batman. Even though...
It's not Ben Affleck?
No, Ben Affleck's out. Yeah. Robert Pattinson is...
DC, gosh, they cannot get a solid
Ben Affleck
universe.
Sucked as Batman.
No, yeah, obviously, but it's so sad that they can't... Is Henry Cavill out too?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I heard he's out. Because they have that new Superman in the Supergirl show. They have Superman in that show, and it's not Henry Cavill. I liked Shazam.
Shazam was really good.
I hope that one stays.
Zachary Levi.
So
yes,
good.
what a man. But back to Joker. Gosh, what do we talk about? There's so much to say. It was a scary movie. I'm gonna say that now. I was frightened while I was watching this movie.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeesh. I'm not used to having, like, physical reactions when I'm watching a movie. Like, but it was this movie and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
No, I was about to say it had a kind of Quentin Tarantino violence to it, like a...
That floored me. I was
So
doing flips in my movie seat. I was.
Are we when he?
Oh yeah, there's a scene in the movie where some of Arthur Fleck's old clown buddies come to
Randall.
to wish him well after his mother passes away, and he grabs a pair of scissors and stabs one of the clowns in the eye and starts slamming his head into a wall. And it's so out of nowhere.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you see him grabbing the scissors before, but like...
But Randall's the one that gave him the gun.
Yeah.
And then got him fired for it.
It's like a sick form of revenge for Arthur, because the
He
clown...
had it
Yeah,
coming.
the clown that he stabs gives Arthur... It was a sign of goodwill. He gives Arthur the gun... In the beginning of the movie, you have to... Wow, the movie's very... You can't just jump in at one point.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, Arthur is jumped and brutalized by a group of teenagers, and Randall, another clown, hears about this and gives Joker a Derringer to protect himself, a little gun. And that's the gun that Joker uses to kill the Wall Street men, and it all happens, and he gets fired because of it. So when Randall comes to visit Joker and say, like, sorry, to offer his condolences, Joker stabs him with scissors, and it's so scary, and it's so cathartic, because it's like, yes, you're taking your revenge. I love how this movie like tricks you into supporting Arthur. Like, he's the protagonist, and that's sick and that's horrible, but it feels good rooting for him.
Yeah. Well, also in that scene, they make it so that you can understand why he's doing that, because the big clown guy that comes in, he, right before he gets stabbed, he says that he wants to corroborate his story with Arthur's and make sure that they match up, even though he said at the beginning his express purpose was to come and cheer Arthur up because he lost his job.
Yeah.
So it shows that in Gotham, everyone's in it for themselves.
Yeah.
And you sort of understand that Arthur is feeling isolated by that. His purpose is to help others, or what he believes. He wants to make other people feel happy, and he feels like nobody else is quite on that same level.
Right.
Nobody is actively giving opportunities up to make other people feel joy or happiness in the world, because he hasn't. No one's done that for him.
Right.
He's been kicked out by his therapist. He's been kicked out by all of his friends.
He's been literally kicked
He's
on.
been literally kicked on. His mother's been lying to him. Nobody in his life has given him the happiness he's trying to give other people. And once he realizes that, he just sort of breaks. He's like, what's the point of it all then?
I also like that we see that Joker still has a little bit of a grip on his humanity in this scene, because he lets the other guy go.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to hurt you. And he lets him out of the house.
No, he literally opens the door.
He opens that. So the other guy's a little person.
Yeah.
That's the little person, and he like Joker doesn't kill. What's the little guy? Benny? What's his name?
Benji.
Irish person.
Something
Irish
He's
little guy.
Irish, yeah.
And Joker, like, the little guy can't reach the lock to get out, and Arthur's like, I'm not gonna hurt you, don't worry. And he opens the lock and he lets him out. He gives him a little kiss on the forehead. And that was...
Doesn't he say, like, you're the only one who is kind to me?
Yeah.
Before he lets him go.
And it's just like, Joker's not crazy. Like, he's not... he's ill, but he's not insane. He has a grip on what he's doing.
I think that's why a lot of people were scared of this movie, because it gave, like, a cause.
Yeah, it explains it
Yeah.
all so reasonably. Yeah, I know the theater I saw it at, specifically for Joker, you weren't allowed to bring any bags or backpacks
Yeah.
into the movie. I had to go walk and stow it in someone's car before the movie
Was
started.
it really specifically for Joker?
There were
Yeah.
signs all over the theater with the Joker posters saying bag
can't,
policy, no bags
masks.
allowed on the premises. You can't even store it in here. You have to take it outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know there's that infamous picture being spread around at an AMC in New York, I think, with the no singles policy, saying if you want to see Joker, you have to come with a friend. Like, they're not
Yeah.
letting solo viewers in.
Yeah.
Because this movie's just that, like... There was a mass shooting at The Dark Knight Rises, and that didn't even have Joker in it. Like, who knows,
Do you guys agree with all of this policy and censorship going on around the Joker movie and trying to stop people from seeing it in some way?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because the Joker character is just connected to all this, like, anarchism and like violent, like senseless violence.
Incels.
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 Yeah. And that's partially like another controversial like gripe about the movie is that it's basically like low-key incel culture, or it's like this one guy that just keeps getting rejected by everyone, and then that's why he gets to go and like kill people. And so it's kind of like I can see why there would be a fear of this movie justifying people's feelings.
Right.
And like, well, if Joker gets to like get spat on, and if you can
like relate to him.
relate to him, like, then why can't I go and like pop some people on the metro, you know? And yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know that it would directly inspire mass violence or anything like that, but I totally understand the concern. I think it's more than honestly, I'm a little surprised there's not bag policies like that for movie theaters in general nowadays. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
you know, just because it's an it's like yelling fire in a movie theater. It's an enclosed area. It's dark. I feel like if anything, the bag policy should just be universal at this point.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
I mean, yeah, I agree with the restrictive policies that they're doing if they were applied uniformly to a lot of these things.
It feels a little bit like
It just feels like the audience isn't being trusted with how intelligent they are and how they can decipher this, because like this has happened with video games all of the time, where it's always like people are going to go crazy by playing these games and then they're going to kill everyone, and it's just simply not the case a lot of the time. The large 99.999% of the time it's not the case. So I feel like concern over thinking that the Joker movie is going to incite a revolution or really cause major damage is a little bit misplaced.
it's a little naive.
Yeah.
But like the like bag policies, that should just be a normal thing in movie theaters.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
Correlation is not causation, folks.
yeah, exactly.
Hot
Right.
takes.
And someone who's crazy is gonna be crazy enough to do this already. They're not gonna be made crazy by the Joker.
Yeah.
If they're looking for a reason to do something,
They're gonna fight.
then they're gonna find it if it's in the Joker or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Kind of pulling us out of this weird meta political section and back into the movie a little bit. The Joker's mother, that was another incredible performance and such an amazing character in general. Penny, dare I say, is the antagonist. Maybe not directly the antagonist,
No,
but
she's
she's
totally
the inciting.
Catalyst.
She's the catalyst.
Yeah.
She's like the Uncle Ben, but if Uncle Ben abused Peter.
Yes.
For sure.
Gosh, she was so sick. And it almost shows like it was maybe out of Arthur's control from the beginning, which I think is the sad part. Like, he's obviously genetically predisposed to mental illness because of his mother. He was abused by her and has these Freudian repressed memories of it. It's like he just tripped before he started the race. Like,
Yeah.
he was set up for failure from the beginning, and that's really, really sad to me. That's one of the saddest parts of the movie. What did you guys think about Penny? Did you feel sorry for her at all, or because for me, obviously it's hard to watch a son smother their mother on a hospital bed with a pillow. That was horrible. Very well shot, very tasteful. But
It's also a very bad Dr. Seuss book, Smother Your Mother.
smother your mother. I will not smother her in a box. I will not smother her with a fox. I will not smother her, Sam I am. But I like when I felt nothing but contempt for her. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, that's so. I felt so angry, but a little part of me felt sorry for her. I don't know why, but I did.
Well, I think it's because she, maybe like the Joker, was in a situation that she couldn't entirely control. Because she was neglectful to Arthur.
Right.
Her boyfriend abused Arthur.
Uh,
That was the that was the thing that was going on, and she obviously should have been more like able to get Arthur out of that situation and not have, you know, allowed it to happen at all. But there's a twinge of sadness in it where it's like she's also she has this mental illness as well, and she can't control that. And maybe she was in this toxic relationship, and there's so many factors as to why she couldn't leave, or all these different things.
Yeah.
So she's a horrible person, and so is the Joker. But you know, they're also sad people.
But that's life.
Yeah, that's life.
I like
quote.
that song a lot. That I really liked that choice of using that for the ending song. It kind of sums up like the Joker. Like it's really a sad premise when you think about it. Like the That's Life song. It's like, you know, sucks, but that's how it is. But it's a really upbeat kind of happy song. And it fits very well with the Joker. Oh gosh, the stairs. The stairs are so iconic.
So much symbolism with them, honestly.
Apparently, it's like a Google location now. Joker stairs. You know.
Really?
But I loved how, and people were pointing this out even when the trailers came out, but Arthur walking up the stairs is symbolic of him, like, struggling to ascend and fit in society. And we see that it's a struggle. And we always see him walking up the stairs after he's been beaten or jumped or, you know, fired. And we see each time he's going up the stairs, it's just getting harder and harder for him to make it. And when he finally embraces himself as the Joker, he's dancing and singing and descending down the stairs confident and it's like he's confident descending into his new persona, right? Instead of trying to hold up a facade, he's just kind of embracing the madness. And I think the stairs were probably the most maybe in-your-face symbolism in the movie, but nonetheless effective.
No, that is one of the examples of the Joker movie having really great writing is the stairs. I mean, because everything you said was pitch perfect. I mean, that's the exact purpose of them. Is it's meant to really emphasize how beaten down Arthur is, because as you said, it's always after some sort of time where he's beaten up or something horrible happened. And by the repetition of that act of him going up the stairs, it makes the release when he jumps into the puddles and is singing and dancing all the much sweeter. My one problem with it is that I wish it would have ended with him, or at least the scene where he's going down the stairs or all in his Joker makeup would have ended after he finished going down the stairs instead of him being interrupted by the detectives.
Yeah.
Because there was, like, I felt fulfilled emotionally. Like, that story arc had finally come to the point where it needed to be. And I was like, yes, this is great. You know, they hit this emotional beat so incredibly well. And then they bring in the detectives, which I think is a pretty dumb subplot.
Hot take, the detectives didn't need to be in the movie.
They most certainly did not. They were horrible at their job. They didn't make that much logical sense.
They didn't really add in... They
didn't add anything.
If you take them out of the movie, the plot doesn't change. Well, no. The only thing, I guess, that they added was one of them getting killed by a clown in the subway. And that sort of incited the clown violence. I'm not sure, did the detective shoot a clown, or did the clown shoot the detective?
The detective shot the clown, and then both of the detectives were critically wounded afterwards, because they were both beaten up.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, so much I didn't catch. Like the garbage stomping thing. Matt, some of us watched Matt Pat's film theory on the Joker, and some of it maybe was a little bit of a stretch. He was saying that there's a scene where the Joker is talking, or Arthur at this point is talking to his clown boss, and the clown boss is like, you know, you're fired. And the whole time Arthur's just sitting, you know, smiling at him like none of this is fazing him. And we cut to a scene of Arthur viciously stomping on what looks like garbage because it's next to a dumpster, and he's stomping on this garbage, and he's, you know, he slams down on it, and then we cut back and he's talking to the manager and he's smiling, and it's like, was this all in his head, or did he really stomp on garbage? Matt Pat was claiming that he was killing his manager in that scene. He was stomping on his manager's body to death.
I don't agree with that.
I think he's reading too much into it. I think it was just garbage, but like, I think it sort of shows that you can read too much into this movie. I think.
It has a lot of artificial depth if you're thinking about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a fault of the movie. I think that's more of a fault on the viewer. Like,
yeah, on Matt Pat.
like I am willing to criticize the parts of this movie that need criticism, but that's definitely not a fault on the movie where you can look too much into things.
You can look too much into anything, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a pretty cut and dry scene for him just, releasing his anger on his own terms and showing that he's dangerous on his own when there's not people around. When he doesn't have any social expectations to live up to in any moment, he's raw and unadulterated and cruel and just evil.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the point of that scene, not that he's fantasizing about killing his boss.
Which, I guess it would make sense if he was. Like, that's something that would happen in the movie, and it reminds me a lot of American Psycho, where Patrick Bateman just says these crazy things and no one listens.
Uh-huh.
Right, where he's just talking to someone and he's like, I'm gonna murder you and eat your cat, and it's like, what? And then no one pays
like,
attention.
haha, that's so funny.
That's kind of how Joker is a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's sort of that same kind of thing where Arthur is desperately crying out for attention and help and someone to save him, and no one's listening, right? And he has to go to such, just like Patrick Bateman, he has to go to such extreme depths to get attention, as far as killing a TV show host on live television. When he kissed the lady on TV, ooh, I would have smacked him.
I know, she just stood there like, oh.
Love it that Joaquin Phoenix said society, apparently off script.
Off script.
Apparently it was, so he goes like, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loser with a society that treats him like trash? And then he goes, you get what you deserve, and he shoots the host.
That was amazing.
Apparently, that was, amazing. Apparently it was supposed to be with a system that treats him like trash. Society...
I think society
hits
works
harder.
better there.
It's also the haha funny word. So that adds something.
System. Why use that word? That's
Society's like right there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So
Casey raised her hand.
sorry, I don't.
yes,
Anyway.
Casey.
Thank you. Okay, so system that kind of crosses into. I think there's a theme of also like the scarcity in Gotham, because you see all of these. Like you see his social services getting like cut, and now he's not going to be able to get his medication. He's not going to be able to keep seeing the counselor that may or may not be listening to him. We don't know, but I feel like that's like he just keeps getting let down by a system that has kind of like he's become codependent on, and when that like slips, like. And they just kind of like pull the rug out from under him. And like, I mean, we don't have money for it. And then he's seeing like Thomas Wayne and all these other people like going to the opera house, and like they have money and they're living like frugally, and he's here suffering. And it's just like the system has failed him.
Living the opposite of frugally.
The opposite of frugally.
Arthur's living frugally.
Yeah. There we go.
No, but that's a good observation, that it's not necessarily society that's hurting him, but a system within that society.
Yeah.
So maybe they should have kept system. I don't know. I think the word society sounds better than system.
It also holds more connotation. It's also kind of the incel keyword, but
the incel keyword.
it is. It's like, we live in a society. Gamers rise up. that whole movement, and that was Heath Ledger is the one who inspired that whole thing. Yeah, I don't know, that I think society, it just kind of sounds better, but also, I mean, I guess the writers put system in for a reason. I'm not sure.
Well, they put it in for the reason that Casey said, is that it's really the system that's screwing him over and not the society.
I guess you could argue that people like Thomas Wayne are part of the society rather than the system.
It's true, but maybe Thomas Wayne is perpetuating the failure of the system that is causing Joker to not have the help that he needs.
And that's such a specific at that point. Like that, we're really nitpicking.
This is really, I think, the soul of Socratic cinema. What's the point of using one word over the other in this? In this very
it really does not matter.
Specific situation. Yeah.
Oh, something just popped into my head that I was gonna
say it.
Do we think there's any
Yes.
Moving on. Do we think there's
Next
any
point.
significance behind Arthur's medication? I've heard some people saying that, like, he's only Joker when he's off his meds.
No.
It's like, no, I think it was just a throwaway line, but do you guys think there's anything to be found there?
I mean, we did get more of, like, the dream sequences after he got cut off his medication.
That's true.
That's when we had the whole thing with Simone, Zazie Beetz. I just think that it's Zazie Beetz, but her name's Simone. Like, when when he completely, like, fabricates that relationship, and then he's what else? But that's like the major thing that doesn't actually happen.
I think she was underused, honestly, Simone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think she was
good.
criminally underused.
No,
Like,
she's a really good actress.
even in the trailer, they sort of hyped that up to be the big point. Like, I remember they showed the shot of Arthur going in and kissing Simone in her apartment, and that was like, I remember when I saw the trailer, I was like, I don't expect Joker to be a romance. So, like, now I'm really interested to see what this is. I wish they did a little bit more with her, maybe, but I don't know how they could have done that. I feel like she kind of served her role as small as it was.
Do we think he killed her?
Yes. Most certainly.
I did not even think of
Yeah,
that.
I didn't even pick that up originally.
Well, so the debate. Sorry.
No,
the,
it's fine.
the debate with it is, we see the Joker in her apartment after we figure out that this fantasy that they've had a relationship is all a lie, and then it immediately cuts to Joker back in his apartment, and there's ambulance lights coming through the window, and you can hear sirens going on. And personally, I think that's a clear indicator that she's dead at this point, and he has killed her. And there's a precedent for there being off-screen deaths as well that are implied but made pretty clear. Like at the very end of the movie, where we see that he killed the nurse that was watching over him because we can see the bloody footprints.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I feel like this whole film has built up an atmosphere that there's just constantly death and violence.
Yeah, it could just be the sounds of Gotham.
It didn't really ignite with me that that's
Yeah,
that's
I
her
didn't.
death. It's just common.
You hear ambulance stuff all the time. Like after he's beaten up, you hear an ambulance, and it's not meant for him because the ambulance never comes for him. But the fact that there were lights going into the apartment is a conscious choice.
Yeah, it makes it seem like it was
But
close.
it's closer.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it would have to be right outside his window.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I feel like it makes more sense for her to be killed as well.
Yeah.
Instead of her surviving or just being freaked out by it, because she would go to the cops.
Now, you reminded me of the ending scene, and I actually have something to bring to the table with that I didn't think about before.
Oh my god.
In our first scene where Arthur's talking to the therapist, she's like, how are you doing, blah, 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 and he's like, I think I liked it better when I was locked up in the mental ward.
Oh, that's right.
And this is the scene at the very end where Arthur has brown hair, making it... You could argue that him having brown hair is him pre-Joker. So you could maybe make the case that... Are we seeing Arthur when he was living in the mental institute in the past, and the entire movie was in his head? Or is this a flashback scene, right? Because it's unclear. Are we seeing him locked up after the movie, or are we seeing him locked up before?
Well, isn't
That's
the
true.
psychiatrist the same one in the building that got shut down, the system?
I think
Was it?
I don't know.
I don't
She
think
looks
so.
she looks similar, but
She
I'm
looked
not sure.
Too similar, yeah.
If it was the same person, then you could make the case that it was the past, because she would still be working in that.
But then if she died, then
But
how would she...
Oh, that's true. Gosh, I don't know if it was the same person or
I don't
not.
think it was the same person. I'm
We'll
pretty
have to
sure it
look
was two
into
different people.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm scared, but I feel like I need to see it again.
Yeah.
I'm scared that I'm gonna not like it now.
Let's go.
No, you could totally see it again. It's probably just me. But like, it's a nearly 2.5 hour movie that I know
Yeah.
all the twists in, and there's not build up to them. So, just take that at what you will. If you get annoyed by that sort of thing. Then...
Yeah, I get it.
But no, that's an interesting point. I don't know. I still think that it's all in his head, and it's all a fantasy. The entire movie.
The entire start to finish, or start to hospital.
I would like to think.
Start to hospital.
I would like to think Start to Hospital is all a fantasy, and possibly even the hospital.
So that brings up the point, though. is the last scene supposed to be like a hospital break or like a because he kills the garden and he's running around? If that is really the only real life scene we see, does that set up an entirely different Joker origin story to take place afterward? Because one way or another, no matter what's real or what's not in this movie, there are two things that have to happen. Mm-hmm. Bruce Wayne's parents, there are two things that we know are real. Arthur Fleck is crazy and has delusions of being the symbol as the Joker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is Bruce Wayne's parents were killed. Those are the only two concrete things that we can say about the movie. Mm-hmm. I think. Because with Bruce Wayne, we know that because during our real life scene at the end in the hospital, we cut back and see Bruce Wayne standing over his dead parents. So we know that that's real. Mm-hmm. So one way, from those two statements, those two presuppositions, let's do a proof here. We can then say that one way or another, Batman is going to happen and Joker's going to happen. So we need some sort of emergence of the Joker. Whatever interpretation we go with, there has to be some sort of Joker and Batman that comes out of it. So I guess, like, at the end, is Arthur breaking free and then he's becoming the Joker? Or was he locked up in the mental hospital after the Joker riots and that really did happen? Because there has to be some explanation for the greater universe.
The way that I would think about it is that he's in the mental hospital as Joker. And he has already become Joker. And what we don't know, and what is up for interpretation, is how he became Joker.
But you don't think that it was the events of the movie?
I don't necessarily think it has to be the events of the movie. And I would much prefer it if it wasn't the events of the movie.
Makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then in the mental institute, when we see him breaking out, that's just a Joker thing to do. You breaking out of the mental institute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in lots of the comics and games, he's locked up in Arkham Asylum, right? And he's always planning a breakout and working with the villains, right? So it's not out of his character to try and break out of things. And another thing that leads me to believe that the events of the movie are a fantasy is that Joker is a very, like, frail individual. But there's a lot of times where he overpowers people that he shouldn't overpower. Like, that clerk in the mental institute when he's trying to get Penny's papers, he tears those papers away.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense because that clerk looks like he could knock anyone out if he tried.
He slams his head against the fence and that scares the clerk.
Also, there's another instance of this happening. He nearly chokes out Alfred.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who
No
is-
way.
Who
No
is
way.
a trained bodyguard and massive as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a fantasy of him being like, yeah, no, I can fight all these guys. I'm stronger than them, and then like it just doesn't feel right for it to be real.
Well, then my next question is, if the clown riots didn't necessarily happen, who killed Bruce's parents?
It could just be
An unnamed crook?
well, because that's what happens in some of the comics. It's not necessarily the Joker that kills.
Right. I like
kills
the
his
idea of
parents.
it being a clown guy, though. But I guess to make sense of the movie, was the clown part of that killed Bruce's parents part of the fantasy, or was it just an unnamed crook? Because now that makes the continuity's a little weird in this movie. It's a little hard to follow if you try and be literal about it. I think at some point you have to just like say whatever. And
No,
go with
it's
it.
totally a movie. We're totally looking way too much into it, but that's the fun about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Me personally, I saw the last, like the hospital scene. I saw it as like a flash forward,
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
and that's why his hair is like.
Maybe his hair's grown out a bit. And
Yeah.
he's cut the green out.
And then he's like, he has like the stubble too.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, and I still think that works into the theory that the entire movie is fake and that this was him just thinking about it, right? Or it could also be that he never had green hair in the first place, and that's just another fantasy, right?
Yeah.
That he wanted to look like the clown that he was, that was his job, because that's very like storytellery for him to look like the job that he was trying to play, right? For him to look like the Mask, almost.
Yeah, deep down, I really want all the events of the movie to be real, just because that satisfies the kind of brain, like, I don't know, the kind of stories that my brain likes to hear, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that just makes, I like things to be concrete and, like, tied up with a nice little bow on top.
Yeah.
So I personally, like, in my own interpretation, I guess I want to believe that what we know happens, and what we know is supposed to be fake doesn't happen, you know? I guess a more literal interpretation of the movie, but I really don't know anymore. I don't know what to believe.
I think that's a great place to leave it off. Not knowing what to believe, I feel like that's the essence of the Joker movie.
What do you think,
What do
dear
you
viewers?
This is for you to decide.
Don't. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify,
Go to YouTube.
Go to YouTube.
No. If you're listening on YouTube, go to Spotify. There we go. Yeah, YouTube's probably not the grandest way to listen. Talk with your friends about it. Tell your friends about us. We love you.
We do. We really do love you.
I love you.
And go watch the movie, by the way, because
Yeah, do that.
Watch it at least once. If you want to watch it a second time, I physically can't stop you. I would advise against it, but definitely go see the movie once. It's most certainly worth it. It's one of the most, I think, entertaining and creative superhero movies that we've seen in a long time, and it deserves to be successful.
You know, I can only think of one superhero movie that might be better. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2.
All right, we're ending the
Okay,
podcast.
Just might be better.
Even Socratic cinema.
Bye, adios.